Before beginning the story, I'd like to say a big thank you for visiting my new channel. I'm going to be uploading alternate history-related stories every single day. If that sounds good, be sure to leave a like and don't forget to subscribe. It means a whole lot when just getting started. I hope you enjoy the story. I'm not good at this kind of thing. I want to say that up front because the people I've seen tell stories like this online, and I've looked, believe me, I've spent more time than I'd like to admit looking, tend to be a certain type, urgent, performative about it. They know how to build to something. I don't have that. I'm just going to say what happened, in the order it happened. And if it lands, it lands. My name is Nola Greer. I'm 33 years old. I live in Portland, Oregon, where I work in post-production for a company that makes corporate training videos, which is exactly as interesting as it sounds. Before that, I lived in Columbus. Before that, a lot of nothing much that isn't relevant. What's relevant starts in the spring of 2011, when I was 22 and working the worst job I've ever had, which is saying something given that I once spent a summer detasseling corn in central Ohio. The company was called ViewPath, small video sharing platform, venture-backed, operating out of a converted warehouse space in the Short North neighborhood of Columbus. The pitch was that we were a curated alternative to YouTube, better content discovery, cleaner interface, more thoughtful about what we allowed on the platform. The reality was that we were 11 people in a building that smelled like old coffee and ambition, trying to out-compete a company with 1 billion users using a budget that wouldn't have covered YouTube's electric bill for a week. I was a media technician, which meant I handled encoding, quality checks, and content moderation. That last part was the bulk of the actual hours. Watching uploads before they went public, flagging what needed flagging, approving what was fine. Hour after hour of footage that the rest of the world would never see. Amateur cooking videos, kids doing skateboard tricks, home recordings of local bands, the occasional thing that went straight to a report and a ban, is the kind of work that changes how you watch things. You stop watching content the way a regular viewer does and start watching it the way an editor does. Not for story, not for feeling, but for the frame. What's in the background? What doesn't fit? What the camera accidentally caught while it was pointed at something else. You develop a reflex for noticing. That reflex is the whole reason I'm telling this story. It was a Tuesday. I know because Tuesday was when I did the bulk of my queue clearing. Mondays had a backlog from the weekend, and I'd spend Tuesday burning through it. The upload came through sometime in the afternoon, flagged automatically by our system because the account that submitted it had been created with an email address that bounced the moment we tried to send a verification link. Ghost account. We got those occasionally, usually spam bots or people who'd mistyped their address during sign-up. Standard procedure was to hold the content, attempt re-verification twice, and delete if nothing came back. I should have just held it and moved on. I had 40-something other videos to get through that day. I watched it because the thumbnail looked ordinary, and I had 20 minutes before a team check-in, and I was the kind of 22-year-old who filled dead time reflexively. The video was 4 minutes and 11 seconds of someone walking through a residential neighborhood and filming it. That's it. No narration, No text overlay, no music, just ambient sound, wind, distant traffic, the crunch of footsteps, and whatever the camera happened to land on. A street, houses set back from the sidewalk, a maple tree that was just starting to come in for spring, a dog standing in a fenced yard, watching the camera go past with the particular disinterest that dogs have when they've decided something isn't worth barking at. Whoever was holding the camera was unhurried. They'd stop occasionally to hold a shot, the way people do when they find something visually pleasing but don't have words for why. It felt like a person who was somewhere they liked and wanted to keep a record of what it looked like. I was most of the way through before my brain caught up with my eyes. I backed it up, played it again from the beginning, slower this time. There was a car in a driveway about 30 seconds in. Sedan, light grey, the front end visible from the sidewalk. I didn't recognize the make. Not that I'm an expert on cars, but I grew up around enough of them to know roughly what was on the road in 2011. And this wasn't it. The proportions were right for a current model, but the front end was different. The headlights flush with the body in a way that wasn't standard yet. The grille smaller than anything I could place. Not dramatic, just a version of a thing that didn't exist yet. There was a woman visible through a window about 2 minutes in. She was standing in what looked like a kitchen, looking down at something in her hand, a phone. The screen was on. I could see the glow of it from the sidewalk. The phone was thinner than anything currently on the market at the time, and the screen was larger, nearly edge to edge. I thought about the iPhone that had come out the previous summer, and this wasn't that. This was further along. The woman's clothes were fine, normal, but there was something about the cut of her jacket that I couldn't place in any brand or trend I recognized, and I spent enough time processing fashion content to have a decent baseline. It was a small thing, just a step ahead of where we were, in a direction that felt continuous rather than invented. I told myself it was a student film, near-future aesthetic, careful production design, low budget but thoughtful. I almost approved it. I watched it a third time because I couldn't get comfortable and I couldn't find where the discomfort was coming from. Halfway through, the person carrying the camera lifted it and pointed it at themselves. The kind of thing people do when they're checking their framing or when they're alone and the act of filming starts to feel self-conscious and you need to break the fourth wall for a second just to feel normal. It lasted 3 seconds, maybe 3.5. The face looking back at me from my monitor was my face. I want to be careful about how I say this because I know what it sounds like, and I know that everyone who's ever looked in a mirror has thought for a half second that they saw something that wasn't quite them. This wasn't that. This was the specific arrangement of features that I have seen in photographs my whole life and know the way I know my own handwriting. The birthmark below my left ear, the slight asymmetry in my jaw that I have always hated and that no amount of angles in photos ever fully hides. The way my eyes sit, which my mother used to describe as thoughtful and which I have always privately thought looks more like I'm trying to remember if I left something on the stove. The woman in the video was older. 10 years, 12 years. I couldn't land on an exact number, but she was clearly past the age I was sitting at. There was a quality to her face that isn't about lines or where exactly, more about the way a face settles into itself once it's done trying to figure out what it is. She'd gotten there. I hadn't yet. I watched those 3 seconds on a loop for a long time. Near the end of the video, she turned the camera around again, not to check framing this time. She stopped walking, and she held the camera up, and she looked into the lens the way you only look into a lens when you're looking at a specific person and you know they're watching. She said something. The ambient audio had enough outdoor noise underneath it, and she was far enough from the microphone that I couldn't pull it apart cleanly in real time. But I could see her mouth move, somewhere between 3 and 5 words. I spent the rest of that afternoon boosting the audio, slowing it down, isolating the frequency band where her voice would sit. I got something. Not clean, never fully clean, but something, a shape. Over the weeks that followed, I came back to 2 versions that felt most right when I watched the mouth move alongside the sound. I've never been able to choose between them, and I've never been able to explain why, even to myself. The first is a statement, 3 words, something like, "This is enough." The second is a question, 4 words, maybe 5. And what I hear when I'm honest about it is something like, "Did this reach you?" They mean entirely different things. I've spent 12 years sitting with both of them, and I still can't make one go away in favor of the other. I traced the account as far as I could, created once, used once, never accessed again after the upload. The email address it was tied to bounced every time our system tried to hit it. The IP address, the upload came from routed to a location on the east side of Columbus that I eventually drove past on a Saturday morning when I had nothing else I wanted to do with my restlessness. It was a vacant lot, scrubby grass, a chain link fence, a sign from the city about a development project that looked like it had been there and been ignored for several years. I sat in my car and looked at it for a few minutes and then drove home. Before the platform's automated system could cycle through and delete the account, I pulled the video off the moderation queue and copied it to a personal hard drive. I told myself I was preserving evidence of something. I told myself I'd figure out what it was eventually. I didn't tell anyone, not my roommate at the time, not my co-workers, not anyone. It wasn't that I thought they wouldn't believe me. It was that I had no idea what I would say if they asked me what I thought it meant, because I genuinely didn't know. I still don't. But back then, the not knowing had a rawness to it that I wasn't ready to expose to other people. It felt too personal, which makes sense, I suppose, given what it was. ViewPath folded in 2013, ran out of runway, couldn't get the next round of funding, shut down over a weekend with minimal notice to the staff. I found out on a Friday afternoon via an email there was 4 paragraphs of corporate language and 1 paragraph of instructions for returning equipment. I moved to Chicago for a year, then to Portland, found work, built something that functions as a life and that I'm genuinely okay with most of the time. The video came with me. Every time I moved, every time I upgraded my computer, the file transferred. I made a habit of keeping it in 2 places because I've lost things to hard drive failures before, and I didn't want to lose this. I don't examine that habit too closely. For the first few years, I'd think about it often, not obsessively. I want to be clear about that because I'm aware of how this can sound. I wasn't pulling it up every night and staring at it. I was just aware of it the way you're aware of something unresolved. A question left open in a room you pass through regularly. Then I thought about it less. Then months would go by. It didn't go away, but it receded into the background of everything else, the way things do when life fills in around them. What I did do, quietly, without letting myself fully acknowledge what I was doing for most of those years, was keep a folder on my computer of photos of myself. 1 or 2 per year, consistent. Something from each year. I told myself it was just a thing people do, documenting time, which is not untrue as a general human habit. But when I sat with myself honestly about it, what I was doing was measuring the distance, watching my face move in the direction of the face I'd seen, checking how close I was getting. 3 weeks ago, I was home on a Sunday with nothing particular planned. I was cleaning, which I do badly and infrequently, and at some point, I picked up my phone and started filming my apartment the way people do, not for any audience, not with any intention, just because the light was coming in at a nice angle, and something in me wanted to hold on to it. I walked through the kitchen. I walked through the living room. I went to the window and held the shot of the street below for a few seconds because there was something about it I liked. Then I turned the camera on myself to check the framing. I stopped moving. The angle was the same. Not similar, the same. The specific tilt of the camera, the specific quality of the afternoon light hitting my face from the left side, and the expression, which I hadn't arranged and hadn't been thinking about, which was just the face I make when I'm doing something alone and calm and have no reason to perform anything for anyone. It matched a still frame from a video I haven't watched in over 2 years, with a precision that made my legs feel like they belonged to someone else. I stood at my window for a long time. I haven't deleted the footage from that Sunday. I haven't watched the old video since. I keep turning over the question of what she was trying to tell me, what I was trying to tell myself, if that's even the right frame for it. I've made versions of the list in my head. What would I send back? If I found a way, what would matter enough to use the chance on? Warnings about specific things, decisions I'd redirect, people I'd hold on to longer or let go of sooner. I've run through all of it. But lately, I keep landing somewhere else. Lately, I keep thinking, what if it wasn't a warning? What if she wasn't trying to communicate anything specific? What if she just found a way to send something backward, and what she chose to send was 4 minutes of an ordinary street in ordinary light, and 3 seconds of her own face, because she wanted the version of herself who was still at the beginning of things to know that she'd gotten somewhere, that she'd found a way through to a life that looked like that neighborhood, unhurried, calm, worth filming for no particular reason. And if that's true, then the words at the end might not be a warning or a question about whether the signal arrived. They might just be the thing you'd say to yourself if you had the chance. The simplest thing. The thing that gets harder to say to yourself the older you get, and more necessary. I've watched her mouth move in slow motion more times than I can count. Both versions still feel possible. I can't collapse it into one. I used to think that was the problem. I'm starting to think it might be the whole point. Nola Greer, Portland, Oregon. That's everything I've got.